I'm a 27-year-old woman, the eldest child of a middle-class family that's always prided itself on being traditional and close-knit. My parents run a small business, a cozy bakery they've owned for over 20 years, and we've always lived in a modest but fully paid-off house in a quiet suburb. Growing up, I knew we weren't rich, but my parents always emphasized the importance of hard work and family loyalty. I believed that until recently I could count on my family no matter what. But as it turns out, loyalty seems to have limits. When my grandfather passed away about 5 years ago, he left me a trust fund. It's not win the lottery money, but it's substantial, enough to change someone's life if managed wisely. The catch is that I can only access it when I turn 30, unless it's for specific purposes like buying my first home or pursuing further education. I've always been practical, so I've been patiently waiting until I can use it to either purchase a small apartment in the city or start a business of my own. It's been something I've looked forward to, a safety net and an opportunity to build something for myself. My brother Tyler is 25 and recently got engaged to Lauren, a 26-year-old woman who comes from a wealthier background. Lauren is the kind of person who lights up a room with her confidence and charm, but I've noticed she has a way of pushing boundaries that makes people either adore her or tiptoe around her. I was cautiously optimistic about her joining the family, until recently. It started at a family dinner a couple of months ago. Lauren, in her usual polished and bubbly way, brought up my inheritance. It wasn't subtle. She mentioned how lucky I was to have something so significant waiting for me and asked what I planned to do with it. I explained my ideas, a small apartment, or possibly starting a business. I kept it vague because, honestly, it felt strange to talk about my finances so openly. Lauren smiled and said, almost jokingly, that it would be so helpful if I used the money to support her and Tyler's upcoming wedding or maybe help them with their future plans. Tyler laughed it off, but there was this awkward moment where Lauren just stared at me, as if waiting for me to agree. I didn't. My parents jumped in, saying it was my money and my decision, but Lauren kept going, suggesting that family money should benefit the whole family. I brushed it off at the time, but something about her tone didn't sit right with me. Over the next few weeks, Lauren's comments became more direct. She started pulling me aside during family gatherings, asking me to reconsider how I planned to use the trust fund. She suggested it would be much better spent helping her and Tyler buy their dream home. She even framed it as a way for me to invest in the family's future. At first, I politely told her no, explaining that the trust had specific conditions and that I had my own plans. But she didn't seem to take the hint. Tyler, to his credit, apologized on her behalf a couple of times. But then he started saying things like, I get where she's coming from, or you're in a great position to help. It wasn't outright pressure, but it was enough to make me uncomfortable. What really surprised me, though, was how my parents reacted when I brought it up. Instead of shutting the whole thing down, they seemed hesitant. My mom even said something about how Lauren just wants to feel like part of the family and how Tyler had always been the one who struggled more financially. That's when it hit me. This wasn't going to go away quietly. The final straw came when Lauren cornered me during a casual weekend lunch, just the two of us. She outright asked me to consider gifting them a portion of the inheritance as a wedding present. When I said no, firmly this time, she accused me of being selfish. She said I was hoarding money that could make a real difference for Tyler and their future. I was so stunned I didn't even know how to respond. Tyler later called to apologize, but it felt more like damage control than genuine remorse. He mentioned that Lauren didn't mean to come off so strong, but she had a point. Now, I can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning. My parents' sudden sympathy for Lauren's point of view has thrown me off balance. I can't tell if they're trying to keep the peace, or if they genuinely agree with her. Either way, it feels like I'm being set up as the villain in my own family. I've started to notice little things, too, comments from relatives about how lucky I am, subtle shifts in the way Tyler and Lauren behave around me. It's like they're testing how far they can push. I'm trying to stay calm and stick to my boundaries, but there's this nagging feeling that I need to prepare for a fight I didn't ask for. And honestly, I'm not sure how much longer I can keep brushing it off. Update 1. A few weeks after the uncomfortable conversations with Lauren, I got a text from Tyler inviting me to lunch. It seemed innocent enough, a casual catch-up between siblings. I figured it might be a good opportunity to clear the air. When I arrived, Tyler and Lauren were already waiting, all smiles. The lunch started off normal, small talk about work, updates on their wedding plans, and a few jokes about how stressful it all was. It wasn't until dessert arrived that the mood shifted. Lauren leaned in and, with a tone so sweet it almost sounded rehearsed, brought up my trust fund again. This time, she didn't dance around the issue. She suggested I gift part of the money to them as a wedding present. It wasn't a suggestion, really, it felt more like an expectation. She even threw in how much it would mean to the family and how it would show my support for Tyler and their future. I stayed calm and explained, again, that the trust had stipulations and that I had my own plans for the money. I thought that would be enough, but Lauren wasn't backing down. She started going on about how I was hoarding wealth that could help everyone and how I didn't even need the money right now. Tyler chimed in, saying he understood my position, but that Lauren had a point. He framed it like I was being unreasonable for not even considering it. The rest of lunch was awkward, and I left feeling like I'd walked into a setup. A few days later, my parents called me over for what they described as a family meeting. When I got there, Tyler and Lauren were already seated with my parents. That sinking feeling I'd had during lunch came right back. My parents, who had always respected my boundaries before, surprised me by suggesting that I should share the inheritance to avoid any unnecessary conflict. My dad even threw in a comment about how family comes first and how this could be my way of showing support. I was floored. They weren't outright demanding it, but the pressure was undeniable. Lauren looked smug, like she'd already won. I reminded them that the trust fund was mine and that I had clear plans for it. But instead of backing me up, my parents started making excuses for Tyler and Lauren. My mom mentioned how Tyler had always had it tougher financially and how Lauren just wanted to feel like part of the family. The betrayal stung more than I expected. I left the meeting without agreeing to anything, but I knew this wasn't the end of it. The next few days were a whirlwind. Somehow, Lauren managed to drag extended family into the mess. Aunts, uncles, and even distant cousins started reaching out, telling me I should do the right thing and help Tyler and Lauren. It became clear that Lauren had framed me as greedy, someone who wasn't willing to support her own family. It didn't matter that the money wasn't even accessible yet, or that it had been left to me for specific purposes. The narrative had been set. I confided in my best friend, who was just as outraged as I was. She reassured me that I wasn't in the wrong, but it didn't make the constant phone calls and messages from relatives any easier. One cousin, who I'm particularly close to, stepped in to defend me, even offering to mediate. But Lauren quickly shut that down, accusing the cousin of sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Things escalated further when Tyler called me late one night, sounding more desperate than I'd ever heard him. He tried to guilt-trip me, saying the money would help Lauren feel welcomed into the family, and that it was my chance to prove how much I cared about him. I refused, again, but the conversation left me feeling drained. That's when I decided to consult a lawyer. I needed to confirm, beyond any doubt, that the trust fund was legally untouchable by anyone but me. The lawyer assured me that I was in the clear and advised me to document everything in case things got worse. That sense of relief was short-lived, though. My parents started dropping hints that they might distance themselves emotionally if I didn't compromise. It wasn't a direct threat, but the implication was clear. They framed it as me choosing money over family, ignoring the fact that it was Lauren who had made this into a fight in the first place. I was cornered, and it felt like every move I made only added fuel to the fire. Lauren continued to spin her narrative to anyone who would listen, painting herself and Tyler as the victims of my supposed greed. The whole situation was spiraling out of control, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get even worse. Update 2. Not long after the family meeting, I got wind of something that left me stunned. A mutual friend casually mentioned that Lauren had already started putting down deposits for an extravagant wedding. She'd booked a high-end venue, secured a pricey catering service, and even arranged for a designer dress fitting. What struck me was how confidently she was spending, as if she already had the money in hand. That's when it clicked. Lauren was banking on me caving. I confronted her at a family gathering a few days later. In her usual composed way, Lauren admitted she assumed I would come around eventually, and that she needed to make quick decisions to lock in the best vendors. She even framed it like she was doing me a favor, ensuring the family event of the year. When I pointed out how presumptuous that was, Tyler jumped in, defending her. He said she had been under pressure to plan and didn't mean to overstep, but it didn't feel like overstepping. It felt calculated. Things took a turn when my parents let slip a detail I hadn't known before. They'd been loaning Tyler money over the years. They said they felt obligated to support him, especially since he was starting a family with Lauren. It made sense why they were so hesitant to call him or Lauren out, but it also opened my eyes to just how deep the favoritism ran. This wasn't just about my inheritance anymore. It was a pattern. Lauren's next move was taking things public, at least in a roundabout way. She started posting vague updates on social media about family greed and selfish relatives. It wasn't long before distant family members, many of whom I hadn't spoken to in years, began flooding my inbox with messages. They told me I needed to do the right thing and help Tyler and Lauren. Some even called me heartless, claiming I was tearing the family apart over money. At this point, I looped back to my lawyer. She advised me to distance myself, both legally and emotionally, from the situation. That meant no longer engaging in family debates about the money and keeping records of everything. It felt like a drastic step, but I knew I had to protect myself. My best friend, always my voice of reason, suggested I take it a step further and go no contact with Tyler and Lauren for a while. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but I could see where she was coming from. Around this time, Tyler left me a voicemail. His voice cracked as he pleaded with me to reconsider, saying this whole situation was destroying the family. He painted it as a misunderstanding, but the underlying guilt trip was hard to ignore. Not long after, my parents echoed his sentiment, accusing me of being stubborn and refusing to compromise. It felt like everyone was rallying against me, except for a few key people who saw through the charade. Then came the most unsettling discovery yet. I found out through my cousin that Lauren had been trying to snoop into my financial situation. Apparently, she'd been asking Tyler for details about the trust, and even tried to get him to access my financial records under the guise of helping with the family budget. Thankfully, there was no way for them to actually gain access, but the thought of her digging that deep sent chills down my spine. My cousin, who'd been quietly keeping an eye on the situation, dug up something even more shocking. Lauren had a history of manipulating people for money. She'd been engaged once before, and that relationship ended in disaster when her ex discovered she'd been using him to fund her lifestyle. Armed with this information, my cousin confronted her, which only led to more drama. Lauren denied everything and accused my cousin of trying to turn the family against her. Meanwhile, the extended family started to divide into two clear factions. Some believed Lauren's narrative about me being selfish and greedy. Others, after hearing my side of the story, began to see the bigger picture. The divide only added to the chaos, with family gatherings turning into battlegrounds of whispered arguments and passive-aggressive comments. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. The stress was taking its toll, and I started to seriously consider drastic measures to protect my inheritance and, more importantly, my mental health. My lawyer suggested filing a cease and desist letter if Lauren continued her harassment. My best friend reminded me that sometimes cutting people off is the only way to preserve peace. It wasn't a decision I took lightly, but I could see the writing on the wall. By now, the battle lines were drawn, and it felt like there was no turning back. My once close-knit family was fractured, and the one person orchestrating it all didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. I could only hope that whatever came next would bring some kind of resolution. Update 3. After weeks of relentless drama, my lawyer and I decided it was time to take action. She drafted a formal cease and desist letter addressed to Lauren, explicitly warning her to stop the harassment and smear campaigns. It felt like a necessary step, especially as Lauren's behavior was escalating. Her social media posts had become even more pointed, with thinly veiled accusations about selfish family members destroying relationships and vague mentions of betrayal. It was exhausting to deal with, and I knew ignoring it would only embolden her further. The cease and desist seemed to hit a nerve. Within days, Tyler and Lauren retaliated by threatening to sue me for emotional distress. They claimed my refusal to share the inheritance and the legal letter were causing them undue hardship. Their threats were flimsy at best. My lawyer assured me they had no legal basis for a case. Still, the audacity was mind-boggling. Tyler, who had always been my easygoing little brother, was now fully entrenched in Lauren's schemes. My parents, unsurprisingly, got involved again. They begged me to settle this quietly to avoid embarrassing the family any further. Their primary concern wasn't about right or wrong. It was about how this ongoing feud might look to others. They argued that I should compromise, give Lauren and Tyler what they wanted, and let the whole thing blow over. Their refusal to acknowledge the harm Lauren was causing made it clear where their loyalty lay, and it wasn't with me. Meanwhile, Lauren doubled down on her social media antics. She started sharing exaggerated stories about toxic relatives trying to ruin her and Tyler's wedding. It wasn't hard to read between the lines, and people in our extended family who weren't already involved started reaching out to me, asking if the posts were about me. The constant barrage of comments and questions was overwhelming. At that point, I decided to block Lauren and Tyler on all platforms and cut off communication entirely. My cousin, who had been my rock throughout all this, stepped up in a big way. She offered to help me gather evidence to protect myself if things escalated further. Together, we combed through screenshots of Lauren's posts, messages, and even snippets of conversations from family gatherings. It wasn't hard to build a case showing Lauren's manipulative tactics. The more we uncovered, the more I realized just how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. The situation took a darker turn when I discovered that Lauren had been spreading rumors at my workplace. A coworker pulled me aside and mentioned that someone had been calling around, asking invasive questions about me and my financial situation. It didn't take long to connect the dots back to Lauren. My supportive coworker thankfully helped me gather resources to address potential defamation. The idea that she was trying to sabotage my professional life was infuriating, but unfortunately, not surprising. Amid all this, Tyler made a critical mistake. In a group text with my parents and Lauren, he accidentally shared screenshots of a private conversation with Lauren. The messages painted a very clear picture of her true intentions. In one text, she blatantly stated her goal was to secure the bag, and that my parents would eventually convince me to cave. She even joked about how she had always been good at getting people to see things her way. The messages were damning. I immediately forwarded the text to my parents, hoping they would finally see the truth. Their reaction was a mix of shock and denial. While they couldn't ignore the evidence, they still hesitated to confront Lauren directly. My dad muttered something about how weddings bring out the worst in people, as if that excused her behavior. My mom seemed more conflicted, but she still didn't fully side with me. The extended family, however, had a much stronger reaction. Once the text circulated, many of them began to rally behind me. Those who had previously been on the fence or believed Lauren's version of events quickly changed their tune. The shift was noticeable, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't completely alone in this battle. Lauren, predictably, tried to backpedal. She issued what could only be described as a fake apology, filled with vague statements about misunderstandings and getting caught up in the stress of wedding planning. It was clear she wasn't sorry for what she'd done, only for getting caught. I refused to accept her apology, which only seemed to fuel her anger. With my lawyer's advice, I decided to take the final step, filing a restraining order against Lauren. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but her harassment had crossed too many lines. The restraining order not only protected me legally but also sent a clear message that I wouldn't tolerate her behavior any longer. The fallout from the restraining order was immediate. Lauren's social media posts abruptly stopped, and Tyler seemed to pull back as well. The tension with my parents remained, but the silence from Lauren was a relief. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had some breathing room to start focusing on myself again. Update 4. Even after the restraining order, Lauren refused to back down. Through mutual friends and family grapevines, I kept hearing snippets of her complaints. She claimed I was ruining her life and tearing the family apart with my stubbornness. Her insistence on framing herself as the victim was exhausting. Every time I thought the situation might calm down, someone would forward me a screenshot of another outburst or passive-aggressive comment she made in a group chat. The breaking point came when Tyler called me directly for the first time in weeks. He issued an ultimatum: either I agree to share the inheritance, or he would cut me out of his life. He framed it as a choice between being part of the family or continuing to cause unnecessary drama. It was clear he was under pressure from Lauren, but hearing those words from my brother was still a gut punch. I confronted my parents about the entire situation, laying everything out, from Lauren's manipulations to Tyler's ultimatum. For the first time, I directly accused them of enabling Tyler and Lauren's entitlement. Instead of addressing the core issue, they dropped a bombshell of their own. They admitted they'd been struggling financially for a while. The bakery wasn't doing as well as it used to, and they were worried about retirement. They hinted that Tyler and Lauren had been helping them out here and there, which explained why they were so reluctant to stand up to them. It wasn't just favoritism, they were financially dependent on them. Hearing this shifted my perspective on why my parents had been so passive, but it didn't make their behavior any less hurtful. My cousin, who had been my strongest supporter throughout this ordeal, suggested it was time to go no contact with my immediate family, at least temporarily. She reminded me that I couldn't keep setting myself on fire to keep others warm, especially when they weren't willing to meet me halfway. After a lot of thought, I decided to step back entirely from family events. It wasn't an easy decision, but the constant tension was affecting every aspect of my life. I told my parents that I wouldn't be attending any gatherings for the foreseeable future and asked them not to contact me unless they were ready to address the situation seriously. Their reaction was predictably emotional, accusing me of abandoning the family, but I stood firm. Meanwhile, Lauren's social media attacks escalated into outright slander. She started posting detailed and completely fabricated stories about how I had sabotaged her wedding plans and refused to help out of sheer spite. A few mutual friends who weren't aware of the full situation began to distance themselves from me, believing her version of events. My lawyer stepped in again, sending her a warning about defamation. The letter must have rattled her because the post stopped abruptly after that. Interestingly, I started to see cracks in Tyler and Lauren's united front. Mutual friends hinted that Tyler was beginning to regret how far things had gone but felt trapped by Lauren's demands. Around the same time, I heard through the same grapevine that Lauren had a backup plan. She was allegedly planning to leave Tyler once they were financially stable. The rumor came from someone who had overheard Lauren talking at a bridal shower, and while I couldn't confirm it, it fit with everything I'd learned about her so far. As all this was unfolding, my parents slowly began to see Lauren's true colors. They didn't admit it outright, but their tone shifted during the few strained conversations we had. They started questioning some of Lauren's decisions and acknowledged that her behavior wasn't entirely defensible. Still, they stopped short of apologizing or taking any accountability for how they had handled the situation. I decided it was time to focus on myself. I started therapy to process the family drama and figure out how to set healthier boundaries moving forward. My therapist helped me realize that while I couldn't change how my family behaved, I could control how much access they had to my life. It was empowering to take back that control after months of feeling like I was constantly on the defensive. In a surprising twist, my extended family organized a gathering and made it clear Lauren was not welcome. They wanted to show their support for me and distance themselves from her toxic influence. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Seeing the people who mattered most rally around me was a huge relief. By the end of it all, I had made my priorities clear. Protecting my mental health and financial future became my main focus. I stopped engaging with any drama related to Lauren and Tyler, refused to entertain my parents' guilt trips, and leaned into the support of my extended family and close friends. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. Update 5. A few months after I officially cut ties with my parents, Tyler and Lauren, the situation took a sharp turn. Word spread through mutual friends that Lauren had left Tyler. The news didn't come as a surprise to anyone who had been following her behavior. Apparently, after realizing the inheritance battle wasn't going to end in her favor, she started distancing herself from Tyler. The breakup happened quietly, with Lauren moving out of their shared apartment under the pretense of needing space. Tyler was blindsided. Shortly after, Tyler reached out to me. It wasn't the hostile or desperate tone I had grown used to during the inheritance drama. Instead, he apologized. He admitted that Lauren had manipulated him into taking her side and that he had ignored the warning signs because he wanted their relationship to work. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but I made it clear that rebuilding any sort of relationship would require time, effort, and respect for my boundaries. Meanwhile, my parents also began reaching out, trying to mend our fractured relationship. They started acknowledging that they had enabled Tyler and Lauren's entitlement and expressed regret over how they handled the situation. However, I kept firm boundaries in place. While I was open to polite communication, I made it clear that trust would take a long time to rebuild. During this time, I made the decision to finally access my inheritance and start building the life I had always envisioned. I used a portion of the funds to purchase my first home, a cozy apartment in the city that felt like a fresh start. With the remaining money, I invested in starting a small business I had been dreaming about for years. It was a calculated risk, but the sense of independence and control it gave me was worth every moment of effort. My cousin, who had been my biggest supporter throughout the ordeal, became an even stronger presence in my life. She helped me navigate the challenges of starting my business and encouraged me to focus on the relationships that truly mattered. Together, we celebrated every small milestone, from my first business client to settling into my new home. Her unwavering support was a reminder that family doesn't have to be defined by blood alone. As for Tyler, the fallout from his relationship with Lauren forced him to confront some hard truths. He began therapy to address his codependency issues and to better understand why he had allowed Lauren to manipulate him for so long. Slowly, he started rebuilding his life. Our relationship improved incrementally, he respected my boundaries and didn't push for more than I was willing to give. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. Lauren, on the other hand, faced the consequences of her actions. After the cease and desist and defamation warnings, her social media presence dwindled. By the time her breakup with Tyler became public, her reputation had taken a significant hit. Mutual friends distanced themselves from her, and she eventually deleted her accounts altogether. I later heard that she had moved to another city to start fresh, leaving behind a trail of burned bridges. My parents made another major change. They decided to sell their struggling bakery and retire. They cited stress and a desire to simplify their lives as the reasons, but it was clear they were also grappling with guilt over how they had handled the family conflict. While they made occasional attempts to reconnect, they seemed to accept that my boundaries were firm. Eventually, they offered a formal apology, acknowledging how much their actions had hurt me. While I appreciated the gesture, I kept my distance, choosing to prioritize my own peace. The extended family, who had rallied around me during the height of the drama, continued to be a source of support. We began organizing more gatherings without any of the tension that had plagued past events. It created a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in a long time. Some relatives even reached out personally to commend me for standing my ground and handling such a messy situation with grace. One of the more unexpected outcomes was reconnecting with distant family members who admired the strength I had shown. Their words of encouragement and solidarity reminded me that not every family dynamic has to be defined by conflict. It was heartening to see relationships blossom in the wake of what had felt like endless turmoil. My business flourished over time, giving me both financial independence and a sense of accomplishment. The challenges of entrepreneurship were a welcome distraction from the family drama, and every small success felt like a victory. The freedom to make my own decisions, unburdened by others' expectations, was a feeling I hadn't realized I needed so desperately. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I can see how much I've grown through this experience. Setting boundaries, prioritizing my mental health, and choosing self-respect over toxic relationships have all been lessons I'll carry with me. While the road to healing isn't always smooth, I'm finally at a place where I can look forward without the weight of the past holding me back.